Bismillah. The first question is, first of all, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, you're well. Very excited that you're here once again. And inshallah, this will be beneficial to many. So first, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure, alhamdulillah. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Alhamdulillah, it's a pleasure to be here with you. Talking about this topic of parenting as Muslim moms. This is always an area that I enjoy and am so happy to be here. So I'll just go ahead and share a little bit about myself. My name is Yusur Hassan. I am American born. My parents are both from East Africa, from Somalia, and my dad came in the 1960s, a really long time ago, to Northern California, where he settled, and he had us, three girls, alhamdulillah. So I was born, inshallah, and raised here in a lot of ways, but alhamdulillah, I've also been blessed to be able to return back home and be with family and be in my own country and visit the land and have those experiences to pull from as well.
MashaAllah, mashallah, it's great. And how often would you say that you are able to go back, whether it's physically, aside from this current pandemic, but physically or, just constantly, maybe via FaceTime or Zoom?
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Well, when I was younger, we didn't have the opportunity to go back a lot, not until my teenage years and early 20s. I go back every few years. And then when I had my children, I have 4 daughters, alhamdulillah. Yeah, ranging ages 11 to 21.
MashaAllah.
I just felt it was even more important for them to go and to visit and develop their sense of identity, their sense of understanding and experiencing how what their heritage is, as well as how people live in the world, like to have a greater sense of humanity and culture and the different lifestyles people live and the different choices people make. It's just, I find that very fascinating in your environment and the opportunities that Allah gives you and how you live your life.
In particular, especially for the born children here, it's kind of, because I'm also half, my paternal side is from West Africa, and it is like, in a way you're not only first generation, but there is that, like, I don't want to say divide, but for lack of a better word, there is almost a divide because they don't see you as African, which is another debate or podcasted episode in itself. But they don't see you as African, and then those who are here don't see you as fully American, and then those who are, so you have the whole mix involved. So it's really interesting that you choose, and it's very considerate of you to choose to incorporate that. Even though you yourself were born, you were born here, I was born here, but then we have that connection still because we're first generation to, back home, or Mali. So Mali and Somalia, people always think it's the same country. I'm like, no, it's different, but it sounds as like, and alhamdulillah, they're all Muslim mostly. But like being able to get them back home, or at least to experience it as a second generation, I guess they're technically considered, but we don't want to get into the technicalities there, but just that's where your roots are. And they're also American, but they have their roots here, over there too. So it's very considerate of you as a parent. I'm just wondering, did you always think that you would do that, being that you were born here? Did you always know that I would want, or was it something that showed up once you became a parent, that like, oh, I want my kids to have that connection, even though I was born here and they were born here, I want them to have that connection? Or is it just something that, was it premeditated?
It's very interesting, and then you say that, and it really, actually, what was the impetus for us going back more often is when my parents decided to relocate about 9 years ago. Exactly. So my parents relocated, there was even more of the strong pull to go be with my parents, and then because my daughters had grown up with their grandparents. So once we had the opportunity, we really discovered how beautiful and how inviting and how so much slower the life pace is there, that we've grown to have a great appreciation for going between the two. In some ways, when we go to visit family and be in Africa, East Africa, Kenya in particular, it's kind of like an opportunity for us to reset, because life in America in particular, where we live, is very fast paced.
Yeah, extremely, totally. So you have 4 beautiful girls, mashallah, and they range, you said, from 12 to 21?
11 to 21, yes.
11 to 21, mashallah. So would you say that, or what was the motivation behind, or maybe you could tell us a little bit first about the services you provide?
Okay, alhamdulillah. Well, I do, well, the name of my business is Amana Parenting, or Amana Parent Coaching. And I primarily, as a certified parenting coach and educator, I primarily work with Muslim moms. And the reason being is my approach in helping moms really is an intimate one, in that I found in my early years in parenting and in the moms that I worked with as a teacher over the years, and really was a source of giving advice to, and a source of someone they can get counsel from, that the issues that we face, or the challenges that we face, honestly start with us. And I'll just back up a little bit, saying when my daughters, the eldest 2 daughters, reached the preteen years, I had a really difficult time. I felt like there was a big roadblock in our relationship. I had parented them a certain way, and I thought that it would work. I really was the type of parent who was kind of like a checklist parent. I had my list, and there's all the things that they were supposed to do, and there were all the things that I was providing for them, and that's what they get, and they should be grateful.
Of course, it should work out that way. Yeah, just cookie cutter, key and lock, fit perfectly. Of course. Why would it not? Of course. SubhanAllah.
SubhanAllah. So I kind of treated them like a project. That's another way to say it. It was more of a process than a do with process. And I tried that for many years and came up against a lot of resistance on their part, especially once they get to the years where they're developing their own identity. They have their own ideas of how they want to express themselves, and they have a deep need to feel heard. And that just wasn't what I was up to in regards to what I stuffed my life with. And when I was really honest with myself, I stuffed my life and their lives with a lot of homeschooling. As a homeschooler, for the last 16 years, we were very busy with homeschooling activities, homeschooling opportunities, masjid, studying their Quran, sitting in different circles of Islamic knowledge. I mean, we have a wealth of opportunities in the Bay Area. And it really was the idea of like, I want to give them everything that I can give them. And that in itself shouldn't make them good children, good Muslims, and grow up to be good adults. And it really was not the case in the end. This whole neglecting the relationship part is what was happening.
The mother-daughter?
The mother-daughter relationship, absolutely. Totally. Seeing them as individuals who need to be talked to and heard and slowed down and spent time with, and having just those conversations that you can't not have as you guide and teach your kids. So as I had my bumps in the road, I finally was able to get a hold of one of my mentors, my respected teachers. And after she patiently heard me out, she told me that I needed to really take a look at myself and what I was bringing to the parenting. And the real of what I was going through had everything to do with my emotional baggage and my negative ideas and thoughts about parenting and my kids, and to stop looking at my kids to be able to lead the way out of this. Because for me at that point, it was like, if they would just listen, if they would just do what they're told, if they would this and that, it was really focused on trying to control them, so to speak, versus cognizant of what my role and what I was bringing to the relationship.
Wow. And at that point, how many years would you say after you trying that particular first strategy did this teacher, how many years after that did this teacher kind of give you this profound perspective for you to switch gears, or direction, I should say?
Right. Well, the problems didn't show up for me
Mm-hmm.
the preteen years. So there were earlier signs for sure that I overlooked in regards to my parenting. My kids, mashallah, the girls have always been very receptive and respectful and helpful. All those things. And I hadn't picked up on signs of them not being happy or not feeling connected to me, or them not feeling heard, or them not necessarily having the opportunities to grow personally with my guidance. So when the preteen years came and I was getting resistance and power struggles, that's when I had to change my course. However, I was really at a loss as to how to do it. So I got the advice, but then I said, how do I do this to myself? And made lots of dua and did some research, and I found this amazing parent coaching program where I received parent coaching. And the whole focus in this program that I took for myself to really work on my parenting challenges focused on gaining more self-awareness around your emotions, your thoughts, and really being able to unpack what's not serving you in your parenting. Because what I found over the years, I was blessed with all these amazing teachers and mentors, and I knew what I was supposed to do, but I was having a blockage, and I couldn't quite get over what that blockage was. And the processes that I learned and the opportunities I had to unpack it with someone guiding me made all. And in my perspective, I can honestly say it gave me a fresh lens to look at my children. I honestly came out of it looking at them no longer as a project, but as this Amana, this beautiful gift that Allah has given me, and that they have their own plan, they have their own talents, they have their own expressions, they have their own path that Allah has written for them, and really just appreciating their uniqueness versus trying to fit them into my box. And it has such a relief in parenting. It just really took a lot of the pressure off.
That is amazing, and inshallah others will reach that I don't know if I should call it a peak, but this come to that realization also that it isn't ever, actually, subhanallah, it's never going to be that lock and key perfect fit. You have eloquently mentioned that, how just from your personal experiences, and then now you're professional, being able to share that with many others. So inshallah, that will be something many can benefit just from hearing it out loud. I'm already like, yeah, this is totally what it's about, because I think a lot of the frustration does come from thinking that, no, well, they're supposed to go to sleep at 8 o'clock because I scheduled it and they're going to sleep at 8 o'clock. But what happened? It's 8:13, and you're just like, and then you beat yourself up, or you feel like a failure from little things like that to big things, like you said, maybe, during the teenage years where there are just maybe other issues that are happening other than just bedtime routines being perfectly nailed. Subhanallah. So it is something that I think many people need to hear. And I just had a quick question while we're on this particular topic of helping moms. I'm curious as to, what about the Muslim dads out there? You're going to leave them without the help, or you're just going to, how did that shape itself to exclude the dads who also parent differently, but they parent nonetheless?
Right. Absolutely. No, that's a good question. I get that question all the time.
Oh, really?
Around where the dads, why don't you serve dads? And like I was saying earlier, it's such an intimate exchange that happens in my coaching calls and the lessons that I give moms, that I find the added layer and dynamic of having a spouse there can oftentimes impede the process, especially if the dad genuinely had his arm twisted to even be there in the first place.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is, I feel strongly that there's so much that a mom can do on her own. And in having said that, it's not necessarily on her own, because she as well needs to learn to set boundaries and be able to communicate effectively with her spouse and be able to know what those boundaries are. And all too often moms aren't setting boundaries. They aren't aware of what their boundaries, but then they're feeling resentful and exhausted and unappreciated afterwards with their spouse in particular. So in the process of parent coaching, it does have a way of transforming us as moms in many ways outside of parenting.
Yeah. So do you have like a complementary or supplementary marriage coaching on the side?
I've never thought of doing that because I know of many, mashallah, amazing marriage coaches that work with Muslim couples.
Oh, wow.
And people too.
Oh, okay.
So they're out there already, alhamdulillah, if that's someone's area where they need more of the help.
Yeah, inshallah. Well, that's definitely one of the things at Neat Parent that I wanted to just not be too exclusive. I mean, particularly Neat Parent is for the Muslim parent. However, I do feel like it is just a lot easier to connect more with the moms. However, the dads are completely, all the babas and abis out there, they are completely welcome to benefit, inshallah, from the information that is available. And so I was just curious if that would be something that you would, should the fathers be deterred from contacting you, inshallah, if they were interested, or should they contact you, but maybe put the mother on the line or something?
I've never gotten that question. I mean, I've had one father approach me. I've had moms approach me about their spouses, and if anything, I'm willing to offer resources as I find them for fathers in particular. But if they would like their wife to get more information, I'm more than welcome to speak with their wife or relay it through them.
Inshallah, that would be great. That's totally great to know. So that definitely leads us to the next point, or just more getting from you. What would you say is the Islamic perspective that you strive to achieve with your parent coaching business, with Amana Parent Coaching?
So as I shared a bit about in my experience with parenting, alhamdulillah, and the main challenges I find a lot of us have really has to do with our perspective as to what our children are. And one of my teachers was very clear to remind us over and over again that our children are an amana. They're a gift from Allah and a trust for us to safekeep and to guide. And they belong to Allah alone. So our responsibility is to fulfill this trust. And in saying that, that means not treating them like a project, but knowing they belong to Allah and the results are with Allah. So all too often, we're so focused on feeling we're responsible for our kids' actions. But in reality, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to hold us responsible, not for their actions, but what we teach them and we don't teach them. And that's where the guidance comes in. That's where the lessons come in. That's where we work on being patient and merciful and teaching them along the way and having that empathy that they're kids and they're learning. So it's a very different approach to project parenting, as I was talking about earlier, and expecting results right away, but it's more so the prophetic way of offering a lot of empathy, the prophetic way of being merciful. They are kids and they're meant to make mistakes, but that's part of learning.
MashaAllah, that I think is totally essential. And I think that is something that we just need to be reminded of as Muslim parents, because you're right, they are an amana, and then on top of it, so obviously your name, your business name is quite befitting. It's extremely appropriate, and it also is a reminder every single time that they are our amana. So I totally appreciate that, and I love the name all the way. By the way, if I haven't said it before, mashallah, it's a great and appropriate name for that. I would say that sometimes, especially in for lack of a better word, heat of the moment, sometimes, let's just say maybe a child or teen tween, one of your might be a little bit let's just say they're in that moment where they're just rude, and it might be a little bit difficult to say or to remember. The first thing is like, well, that's so rude, that's so disrespectful, or my parents never, or you just kind of think about your own upbringing sometimes, or think about the current situation, or you just think like, well, I'm the parent, how dare they talk to me like that. What would you say would be one of the maybe best ways to remember that, and just keep that in perspective? Because I definitely undeniably can say that, yeah, we sometimes forget, or sometimes, maybe in a slight rage, I would be like, you just can get and lose sight of the focus that, like, you know what, let me just, take a sip of water, or Bismillah, let me approach this differently, or let me cool down, and then address this strategically with that in mind. But sometimes we can forget. So what would you say would be one of those ways in which we can remember that, or keep that in mind?
Absolutely. That's incredibly common. And the reason why it's so common is because we're human. We're going to end up, we're human. We're going to make mistakes in the same way our kids make mistakes. But however, we have a choice as to whether it's going to be a pattern in our exchanges with them. So what I would say, the approach that's very helpful is to get curious instead of furious in the moment. Really get curious with yourself, with what's happening with the kids, really taking that deep breath and reminding yourself that there is another way, and I can be curious and ask yourself, so what's going on with me? What am I needing in this moment? What may be going on with my kids? Are they tired? Are they needing connection? Are they anxious about something? Are they fearful about something? Asking yourself those questions allows you to not take it personal in regards to the kids acting out. It's not that you allow them to act out, so I have to be very careful to always remind people I'm not talking about being permissive. Getting curious, you're looking for what is the reason behind the behavior. There's always something behind the behavior. There is oftentimes an unmet need, and there's also oftentimes an opportunity to teach them a lesson as to what is the appropriate way to meet that need, to make a request of us, to take care of themselves, whatever it may be, to come talk to us if they're fearful of something. And for us, if we have whatever our unmet need may be, or feeling under some sort of pressure or anxiety, or we're exhausted, recognizing that's what's driving our heatedness in the moment. Our kids are going to do and say all kinds of things, but when we're heated, it's not a teachable moment, nor is it a learning moment. It's really important. I feel that myself and parents all the time. We got to ask ourselves, as the leaders in the situation, because our role modeling is incredibly important, because what we do, our kids will do. They follow what we do more so than what we say. So if we're throwing a tantrum, an adult tantrum, then we can't expect them not to behave in that way as well when they're frustrated and they're tired, or something's going on with them. So empathy is important. Getting curious, giving yourself what you need, whether it's a break, whether it's something to drink, and you can always circle back around later and have that teachable moment to explain to them, to teach them the lesson, or even give the consequence that is necessary. But at least by then you'd have the time to think it through and give a fair consequence and an effective consequence, versus throwing out punishments in the moment, which oftentimes causes a lot of disconnection with our kids, and it causes a lot of resentment and power struggles. It fuels power struggles. So getting curious, not furious, is a really useful approach in the heat of the moment situations with our kids, which we all have. It's part of the test of parenthood. Like getting curious, not furious in challenging situations was really helpful in being able to manage our big emotions and change our perspective, and be able to bring our brain back online and not be hijacked by our emotions. Therefore, allowing us to move away from being reactionary in our parenting, but more responsive and effective and loving in our guidance for our kids.
MashaAllah, that's great. So with that, curious being like finding out, just assessing the situation, like why were they just rude just now, or why did they just walk away while I was talking to them? You mean like curious in that respect, or in another way? Because definitely fury will accompany a very rude child immediately. So subhanallah, I think that is very hard for people to, like I said, just kind of not get upset when you see your kid being disrespectful or what you think is absolutely rude. But what do you mean by curious? Do you mean by curious actually asking them questions like, why did you just do that? Or curious in your head, internally or externally? Please elaborate.
Curious in your head because what is presenting itself is circumstances and needs that we address. So if a child is giving us an attitude in that moment, there's some unmet need behind that attitude. They're not knowing how to deal with something they're going through. They may have a physical need, they may have an emotional need, and they haven't learned how to handle their emotions. They haven't learned how to make a request from you if they need something in that moment. And of course, we're talking about anything from young kids to teenage years, if that's something that hasn't been taught to them. So if we're able to give the benefit of the doubt and recognize that it's not personal, they didn't wake up that morning wanting to make their parents upset or to back talk their parents. I mean, the reality is all kids really do need and want our unconditional love and our acceptance. Then we have to have that mercy for them being immature as they are and guide them towards better ways of managing their emotions, better ways of learning how to fulfill their own needs. So getting curious about our children is one aspect of it, but just as well curious about ourselves. What might we be needing in that moment? Are we exhausted? Are we under pressure? Are we overwhelmed? Are we feeling unappreciated? Checking in with ourselves as to what is our unmet need and taking responsibility to do something about it. And we may not be able to do it in the moment, but recognizing when we're showing up heated, it isn't about what our kids are doing or not doing because they're not responsible for our emotions.
So would you say that there's an actual resolution, or you would say that it's, back to that idea of it's not lock and key, cookie cutter, straight answer, correct answer? There's not one answer?
Absolutely. Because as you assess it, you make the best decision. And taking that pause is, alhamdulillah, our deen, our beloved Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has warned us about being tasteful in situations. So it's best to give
sabr.
Pause. Give yourself that pause, and then you can decide it really is something you can circle back around and still have the opportunity to teach a lesson and still have the opportunity to give the firm consequence if necessary. The goal is not being reactionary in that moment, throwing out unfair consequences and harsh tones and harsh words at our children that can be detrimental to our relationship with them.
Totally. So if you wouldn't mind, could you please share one personal example of a challenge that you might have had, a parenting challenge that you might have had, and how you resolved it? So it could have been like, a specific example of A plus B equaled C. If you wouldn't mind sharing that with our listeners, inshallah.
Right. Okay.
If you can think of one.
Yeah. Let's see. So my youngest daughters are one's a preteen and one just turned 13.
Mashallah.
Mashallah. So this is the age where it's really interesting. Like in the past, you could have asked them to do something or change plans on them, and it would have gone over really easily. Like they wouldn't, they'd accept it quite easily. But when they get into these years, they tend to have opinions about things that are surprising, but it's normal because they're at this stage where they're thinking about things a bit deeper and they're wanting more autonomy. They're wanting to make decisions about things because it's normal as they go into adulthood. wanting to separate and be their own people. So I recall earlier this school year, my daughters in their homeschooling group being allowed to drink tea in the morning with their friends before they started. So one morning, my daughter goes to grab the caffeinated tea, and she's wanting to have black tea in the morning. And I turned to her and I go, "Oh, no, we're not doing caffeinated tea, but you can choose other teas in the morning. That's not what we're doing." And she did like I asked her to do something that was just unacceptable, unbelievable. And she kind of just froze for a good 3 minutes, and I had to take everything in me. Not that face. So the thing being, I was really cognizant of this is normal for the age. They have a hard time, and alhamdulillah, in particular, knowing my child with change, and that she felt like I just rained on her party, and that's fine, and I allowed her to process it. But I didn't take it personal because she wasn't making the face towards me. She didn't use a rude tone towards me. She didn't backtalk, didn't do any of that. But in giving her that space to work through it on her own, within 3 minutes, she was back to normal. And I didn't change anything I said or did. And I was like, okay, let's move on. And we moved on with our morning. And there wasn't this big tug of war around, how could you have said that? You're so disrespectful, everything I've given you. The mom of 10 years ago definitely did a lot of that, and it didn't get me anywhere but into power struggles and just genuine unhappiness in parenting. So that would be an example. So what I'm saying is we can do it ways, and we can teach them as well ways to express their opinions in a respectful way, in an appropriate way, and not feel like we're being permissive, but we also don't need to shut them down and to stuff their feelings and stuff their sense of who they are and their self-expression and what they believe to be right. Because she believed black tea was appropriate for her.
Yeah, mashallah. And she believed that that was the day where she was going to ask her mother, or not even ask, but obtain it.
Yes.
And that she deserved it. She achieved the age of 11 or 12, and she deserved to have tea with caffeine. You have to applaud her. What's the word? I don't want to say, it's not necessarily tenacity, but definitely that confidence, that level of confidence, mashallah, not being disrespectful, but also being confident that I'm going to, she wouldn't have known if she didn't try.
Right. Absolutely. Mashallah. It's so important for us to give them opportunities to use their judgment and make decisions and check in with us. Because otherwise, if they don't do that, they're not going to have the confidence in making decisions. And I explained to her, you're just a bit young for that. I didn't say anything wrong with her. I didn't criticize her for considering drinking black tea. I didn't make it mean something about her. And I guess I would circle back around into saying that's the main difference here. We want to parent our kids in a way where we're uplifting them. We're not labeling them. We're not putting them down. We're not hindering them. We want them to grow up with a healthy sense of self-esteem and confidence to check in with us when they need to, learn from their own experiences when they need to, trust in Allah as well. All those things are key. And if they can do it in the container of our household where it's safe to do it, then that's the best place to do it, with us who have their best interest in mind. And they need to feel we have their best interest in mind.
Yeah, we're their first teachers. We're their first cheerleaders, or quote unquote, biggest supporters always. And, at the end of the day, it actually is apparent that she knows, well, there is black tea in the house. There will be a day in which I will be able to obtain it. But today is not the day. I hope she knows when that day will be, but at least she knew, with appropriate and calm guidance from her mom. Mashallah, Yusur, you, I'm sure, have not pat yourself on the back enough, but I think that is because it's in the house. If she sees the black tea in the house, it's the same thing like someone saying, oh, well, don't do it, but you see me do it. Don't do what I do. but so it's kind of hard to sometimes convey that message where it's like, do as I say, not as I do, because a lot of people do have that mentality. But I think that you should pat yourself on the back. Of course, you're the professional here, but definitely as the outsider listening in, I'm like, wow, yeah, well, that was also great for you to allow her to understand that it is in the house and there will be a day in which you will be able to obtain this black caffeinated tea.
Right. Yes. And that's actually a really good point, because oftentimes our kids think that what we're telling them they're not allowed to do, that it's always going to be that way. That
Yeah.
they're going to have the opportunity. I mean, that's the kind of the way in which they understand the world. But as you're saying, when you present it to them, letting them know you haven't reached that age, it's not appropriate for you. And I think I told her, or I may have told her after or at other times, that she's too young to drink black tea because it's gonna get her addicted to black tea, to caffeine. And if she gets addicted to caffeine, she's gonna have headaches in the morning, and that's not a good thing. She's too young to have that responsibility. Whose responsibility will it be? It'll be my responsibility. So I'm letting her know, when you get a bit older, you'll be able to manage what comes with drinking black tea. And she understood that. That wasn't a big deal. It's not that I just wanted to say what I wanted to take it away from her just because I wanted to. It wasn't this random, willy-nilly kind of thing. There was some reasoning behind it.
Totally. Now, did you ever give her that date or age or range?
I think we've had other conversations about tea drinking, because our family is big in drinking tea. It's a big part of Somali culture. And she sees her cousins when she goes to East Africa. So she knows in the teenage years she'll be drinking more often. It's just not happening right now.
Yeah. And it's interesting because this is your 11 or 12-year-old?
13-year-old now. Yes.
Oh, she's now 13. Okay. And my youngest daughter, I believe, and tea is really big in Malian culture, as well as just North and West Africa. I don't know what country isn't centralized around tea, mashallah, but it definitely is something that is big in Malian culture as well. And now she's 12, and when she was around 11, she attempted the same thing too. And yes, we do have it in the house. We have also coffee as well. I don't drink coffee, but we have coffee in the house for those who might be interested as in that beverage. And then we also have a bunch of tea, and she did attempt the same thing. So it's funny, subhanAllah, that you mentioned that with the one who was the same age as my daughter when she requested it, or she would just ask every single day because she would see her classmates or peers drinking, have a Starbucks cup or a Pete's cup or a Peerless cup of something, usually caffeinated. And she knew that we had caffeine-free drinks for them. They don't even drink soda. But first of all, with the tea, no, they had caffeine-free. They wouldn't even, it was, at the end of the day, we do know that there is a day that's going to come that they're just going to ask. There's going to be the first time for everything, So there was that first time where she did ask, "Can I have some of the? Can I have some coffee, or can I have some tea with black tea, or can I have this particular tea with caffeine in it?" And it was just like, "Oh no, actually, no, you can't." Okay, and no, why? Even if they don't ask why, but I'm the type of parent that I tend to talk a lot, first of all, if you haven't already noticed, mashallah. And then on top of it, I tend to not give single word answers, which in retrospect, I think is a good thing as being a parent, because I think they deserve that. They deserve the background information, or they deserve the reasoning. They don't need to see or hear a whole bunch of no's and red tapes. I think they need to see and hear no with red tape, but knowing that the tape does come off, it comes off on February 30th. I mean, there is no February 30th, but sometimes the tape never comes off. But anyway, I do think that children or our Amana are very curious by nature, subhanallah. And then on top of it, they do need to, like they say, quote unquote, spread their wings, but we still need to give them that guidance and that support. And I think being respectful equally, you know, it's a reciprocal relationship of respect that is to be given. It just kind of gives them that additional confidence. They're like, oh, so we've told her, I think we told her in high school. Did we tell her in high school or college? I forgot what we told her, but she hasn't, mashallah, she hasn't even requested it since. But it was a time where she would request it at least twice a week. Can I have some coffee? Can I have some caffeinated tea? Can I please have? Well, my friends, can I please have? And we would just, subhanallah. It was like, no, not quite yet. You're too young. You're too young. And maybe at this particular age, we might allow you to taste it. But with that being said, I just think that was interesting. But with that being said, I wanted to also move on to something which is still similar to what we were just talking about. Just how can we, particularly as Muslims, you know, mashallah, we're all very diverse. We're all from different countries with different backgrounds, different, you know, and there is always a cultural influence. Inshallah, the Islamic influence and perspective is at the forefront. But there are ways in which the cultural influence or the cultural perspective sometimes pushes its way to the front. So how, as Muslim parents, because whenever you just say, just in its essence, Muslim already is, it just encompasses, it's already known that it encompasses so many cultures, so many countries, so many languages, like just, it's extremely diverse, mashallah. And I feel like sometimes as a parent, we tend to look at how did our parents parent us? How did our parents parent us? How do we parent? How do the people in the current country I'm living in parent their kids? What's the cultural norm of the current country I'm in? So you could be, you know, Chinese Muslim in Australia, or, you know, Jamaican Muslim in Russia, you know, and those influences, you know, can seep in. So I'm just curious, by the way, particularly because my mother, their grandmother, was visiting, and she's from another country different than my paternal country, and so there are those two. So I was raised with two different cultures, and she was just like, yeah, I saw her attempting to let her taste the espresso and the coffee, and luckily I came in, subhanallah, and I was like, oh yeah, no, we're not doing that yet. But in her country, you know, kids have espresso, and and they have coffee, and they have caffeinated tea at, you know, there's not an age restriction. So you have that influence where it's like, you don't want to be disrespectful to the elders, but then you don't want to be kind of like, oh, well, we raised you, nothing turned out. I actually I don't drink coffee at all. I love tea, but I don't drink coffee. And it's like, what do you do when you have all these influences, positive or negative, all these streams of resources, unwanted and wanted resources of how to parent? And I feel like that's particularly something that many Muslim parents, which you might be able to shed light upon, have to, quote unquote, struggle with.
Right, absolutely.
What would be your advice for that?
Yes, that's very real. Growing up in the West, and then you have your culture, and then you have your religion, and then you have the country you live in's culture. There's a lot going on that's influencing your parenting. What I have found after much trial and error, very black and white, and I've had to learn to undo that, because there are a lot of nuances, alhamdulillah, in our deen. And there are things that are more acceptable than we think are acceptable, and there are things that are just black and white that we should be very clear about. So it's really a matter of setting your priorities as a family who is striving to instill Islam and practice Islam through your parenting. So I think the simplest way that I found to align my parenting with Islam is really starting with myself. And my character with respects to, am I having a good opinion of others and their intentions? And I'll take your example around the coffee, because I think it's a perfect example of that. And this is a lot with us, and I'll say it for myself. I've had many, many situations with extended family offering my kids something to eat or to watch that I was totally not okay with. But there were other things that I was like, okay, I'm being controlling. And they, out of their heart, alhamdulillah, want to be generous to their relative, and they want to offer them something. Why am I getting in the way of allowing them to fulfill that sunnah of giving gifts?
Yeah.
So twofold. One fold is checking myself in regards to what am I making it mean? Am I making it mean that, oh, if I allow this to happen, my kids, am I allowing fear to drive my parenting? Meaning, like, if my kids have this espresso, I'll just take your example, is the fear they're going to want espresso and they're going to crave espresso and they're going to secretly drink espresso and they're going to go down a certain path in life? You know, am I having these unrealistic fears? Am I trying to control the situation and feeling that my relative is stepping on my toes or my boundaries about what's best for my kids? You know, I have to question myself in that situation. And then, like I was saying, the spirit of Islam, like really wanting to allow my kids to enjoy their relatives and not make a big deal about the little things. Now, there's a very fine line when it comes to hard things. Like, my kids we do not go to families' houses where there is mixing. We don't go to families' engagements or weddings if there is any alcohol. So there's the fine line of the things that are hard, and we believe, and we want to we are required to prioritize, but then we make up for it in other ways. And growing up in the West, one of my teachers said, which I have found incredibly useful in being more balanced and harmonious in my parenting approach, is for anything that I'm telling my kids are not allowed to do, it's something haram, you're providing 3 halal things that they can do, because we don't want our kids.
That's a great tip.
Restrictive.
Yeah. Because then they'll just think like, I hate everything, or that we hate they'll just think that we hate everything, or that Islam is a religion of like no's.
Right.
We don't want that.
Absolutely. Especially in a culture, and I'm talking about growing up in the US and parenting my kids in the US, there's so much out there that looks really engaging and enticing and exciting to the kids. And for them to feel like they're being left out and they're being deprived isn't a good place for them to be. So it's up to us to get really creative with ways to engage with them, and ways to provide opportunities for them in a halal way. And
yes, mashallah, I think that's great. And that was actually my last question was, could you please share a parenting tip for the neat parent community? Particularly because we are Muslim parents, and you know, all the tips, pretty much that's what Neat Parent is about, just being able to provide that reminder, and that reminder could be in the shape or form of a particular tip that, like, oh, okay, a reminder that we're constantly making wudu, so maybe a tip could be how to make sure that you don't have water everywhere. So I recently shared a tip, that was my tip last week, was have squeegees around to get that excess water off the countertops, because we're constantly making wudu. So did you have any, or do you have any tip for our neat parent community? You've shared, I think that was great. That one was just absolutely, if it was another one we could squeeze out of you. If not, we can definitely have folks reach you directly if they want to get more valuable information from you. Mashallah.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, let me think for a moment. So we talked, I think I'd like to go back to the curious, not furious approach. I really feel strongly that we all too often take our children's behavior personal, and also believe that it's okay and appropriate to get furious with them and to blame them. So the approach, or the tip here, is really the idea of slowing down, getting curious as to what's going on in the situation and with yourself, and not allowing ourselves, if we still feel furious, to act on it. Definitely. And in not acting in the moment, you're allowed to like really think it through and come back and parent your kids in a more responsive way.
Mashallah, I think that is absolutely valuable, and inshallah many will hear that tip. And if they cannot hear it, or if they end up not hearing it on the podcast or the other social media platforms, which this special interview will be available, what is a way in which folks can reach you and have access to the valuable services you provide?
Alhamdulillah, absolutely. Yes. I think for now, the best place to find me is on Instagram under Amana Parenting.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll put that information as well. I'll put some links, or maybe I'll put like a picture of that so that folks can reach you easily, inshallah. So Instagram, is there any other way?
As well as they can email me directly. They can email me directly if they'd be interested in joining my email list, where I sent out tips and advice and perspectives around improving our parenting as Muslim parents. And my email address is amanaparentcoaching@gmail.com.
Awesome. That's great, because I know some people, not going to mention any particular names, are not the best with Instagram. Mashallah. I must admit, Zakaria is not the best at Instagram. So I know I'm not alone, but definitely I'm sure many, if not all people or everyone knows how to, everyone should know, or most people know how to send an email or sign up for your newsletter. So that's great that you provided Instagram and email as well. And inshallah, folks will reach out to you and can benefit from additional valuable services. Excuse me, I was moving something. Additional valuable services that you provide. And we at Neat Parent Community definitely want to thank you so much for your time and your contribution. Jazakallah khair. And we, inshallah, will be in touch. Maybe we might have some follow-up questions that come through, and I will definitely forward them to you and also address them on a live stream maybe, or on the website, the neatparent.com website.
Alhamdulillah, that sounds wonderful. It's been lovely being here, inshallah, with you, and I wish you so much success with this beautiful endeavor. May Allah give you tawfiq, alhamdulillah. And I look back. I definitely enjoy this exchange, and yes.
Alhamdulillah, I did as well, and we definitely aim to make sure that may Allah make it something that many can benefit from, and may Allah grant you tawfiq as well in your parent coaching business, which I think is just amazing. I can't even imagine the term in Somalia like 25 years ago, or in Mali, but definitely I know that your reach is very far and wide, and alhamdulillah, it is not only exclusive for Bay Area folks. I am very proud to say that you have and you continue to help many parents, women, moms across the globe. So mashallah, may Allah continue to grant you the ability to have many benefit from you and your services, and may Allah can grant you tawfiq. Ameen ya Rab. All right. Well, Jazakallah khair once again. I think it is almost time for Maghrib. So inshallah, we will conclude this interview, and inshallah, the Neat Parent Community will provide some feedback or questions, and they can do so at parentneat@gmail.com. You can always contact us via website, which is www.neatparent.com. Also Instagram at neatparent.com, at neat, and there's also Facebook at Neat Parent. The only thing is the email, which is different, and that's parentneat@gmail.com. But everything is Neat Parent. Thanks so much. Jazakallah khair. Inshallah, to the next one or next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.